On October 5, 2022, OPEC+, with the leadership of Saudi Arabia, has decided to reduce its oil production output by 2 million barrels per day. A measure like this is one of OPEC's most important and dangerous measures ever, considering the current global economical situation and its importance to the US. We'll explain what the US has to do with it in a bit. The Saudis has caused a massive outrage This shocking decision rattled American politicians where they demanded that Biden should take strict measures against Saudi Arabia, the leader of OPEC. With the global economy facing inflation and the rising energy prices, the US sees that the Saudis' move, which it made in coordination with Russia and other oil-producing countries, as a blatant display of siding with Russia. Biden said in an interview with CNN that the Saudis will face consequences for their actions but haven't specified what could possibly be done. There are a few questions to answer here. Why is the US so outraged from this oil production decrease, and how are the Saudis allegedly siding with Russia? Also, what can the US do to contain the situation? And is there a sinister reason behind the Saudis' decision? Is it a political or simply an economical decision? And who are the real winners and losers here? These are all the questions that we are going to answer during this episode. If you enjoy videos like this, consider subscribing and hit the like button for similar content. First of all, what is OPEC? OPEC stands for the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries. It is a global organization that comprises of these 13 countries and an additional 11 countries that are not members but voluntarily agree to cut supply during their meetings. These 23 countries supply 44% of the world's oil exports, so they are a force to reckon with. According to their website, OPEC's objective is to coordinate and unify petroleum policies among member countries, in order to secure fair and stable prices for petroleum producers. In other words, their policies play a significant role in oil prices, and they manipulate their oil production levels to dictate oil prices globally. In their last meeting, OPEC decided to reduce their output in order to increase oil prices, and the US wasn't happy. Back in July, US President Joe Biden visited Saudi Arabia to meet with the king and the de facto ruler Mohammed bin Salman, also known as MBS. One of the main reasons of that visit was to get reassurance from the Saudis that they will work on stabilizing oil prices amidst a period where oil prices were skyrocketing, partly due to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Biden claims that Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates have agreed to increase oil production. As a result of that agreement, oil prices did experience a sudden drop. A barrel of oil cost $129 in June but went down to $85 straight in July and remained relatively stable at that price in August and September. The Americans now feel betrayed that OPEC made this decision under the leadership of Saudi Arabia, who had promised to continue the same oil production output. OPEC claims that this was a unilateral decision, but the Americans claim that they privately spoke to some members of OPEC that claim that they were coerced into voting in favor of the production cuts. The US is also claiming that the Saudis are siding with the Russians by increasing oil prices. Since Ukraine's invasion, Russia was boycotted from their largest markets like Europe, and their oil revenue took a major hit. Countries like India and China enjoyed the discounted price of Russian oil and overbought in large quantities. Now, this oil supply cut will boost Russia's economy as oil prices are expected to rise again. Everything that's oil-based is expected to experience a price increase due to this decision. On the other hand, the Saudis insist that this decision was not a form of support to Russia and the decision was unilateral for economic reasons. It's not the first time OPEC cut oil supply, but this one specifically rattled the US for one reason: elections. The US House of Representatives and Senate elections is on November 8, and both houses are currently majority Democrats. It's in Biden's interest to keep it majority Democratic so that he can easily pass legislation without the Congress turning it down. According to a recent poll, 37% of voters said that their votes will heavily depend on consumer prices, and gas prices weren't looking great lately. Biden is aware that the upcoming elections will be tough considering the recent trend in oil prices, and the Saudis just added more salt to the wound. So what can the US do now? It seems that Biden will impose some sort of restrictions on Saudi Arabia, but nothing is confirmed right now. The US is reconsidering its relationship with Saudi Arabia, and some politicians are urging Biden to punish the Saudis. Some proposed measures include stopping arms sales to the Saudis and remove the sovereign immunity that the Saudis enjoy so that they could be brought up in US courts. This is called Nopec, which stands for the No Oil Producing and Exporting Cartels Act. This act would remove the immunity that OPEC countries enjoy in the United States. However, this law will never pass. Let me explain. This law was first introduced in the year 2000, and between 2000 and 2012, it was proposed 16 times and failed each and every time. The reason being is that if such a law was passed, this will open a new set of problems that the United States cannot handle. The Saudis are threatening to pull out their assets from the US, which is worth $1 trillion, and also stop selling oil if Nopec was passed successfully. That's why in 2007, when Nopec passed the House of Representatives and the Senate, George Bush had to veto this legislation to turn it down from happening. Currently, some analysts believe that the best thing the US can do is to try to contain the situation as much as possible. This can be done by increasing oil production locally and increase their reserves. They have to cope with this hit as smoothly as possible. But why did the Saudis make this move? US and Saudi relationship is very important and strategic for the US. The US wants to have strategic friends in the Middle East so that they can build overseas military bases and enjoy large volumes of oil supply. However, this move from Saudi Arabia came as a complete shock to President Biden. The Saudis claim that they made such a decision to control oil prices. The US claims that they are siding with Russia, but it is not clear yet if there are any political motives by the Saudis, although that could be the case. What's clear though is that Saudi Arabia's economic vision for 2023 states that the total exports will generate a revenue of $298 billion and oil revenue will produce 70% of the country's revenue. Their oil's revenue for next year is calculated based on a $76 per barrel price. This means that Saudi Arabia doesn't want the oil price to dip below that number, or it will face some growth stagnation. The price of oil was hovering around the $80 mark, which is understandable if the Saudis wanted to make sure that it will keep going up from there, not down. The oil production cuts will result in the necessary price increase. Other OPEC members also share similar economic outlooks. So, who are the real losers and winners here? No one is winning here. The US will suffer some price increase in oil-based products, and Biden will possibly lose some seats in the upcoming Congress elections on November 8. On the other hand, the Saudis are messing up their relationship with the Americans. The Americans are the main supplier of weapons to Saudi Arabia, and the Saudis are the main supplier of oil to the US. As tensions rise, the future of this relationship remains unclear. One thing for sure is that this decision by OPEC will have negative impacts on OPEC members themselves. As prices increase, and considering the recent inflation, the American central bank is fighting it by increasing interest rates. Many OPEC members have large loans from US institutions, which means that they will now carry the burden of their own vote. To wrap it up, this OPEC move could be the turning point in the US-Saudi relationship. The United States is seriously reconsidering their ties with the Saudis, and the Saudis seem not to care. Their limitless oil production gives them great control on oil prices, which ends up rippling throughout the economy. It appears that the Saudis has the US by the throat right now, and if the Americans tries to be smart and do something, the Saudis will cut them loose to dry. Many countries are reducing their dependency on oil by banning gasoline vehicles. Depending on electricity and renewable energy is the solution to avoid being under the mercy of other countries. Question is, will the US react to this decision and risk cutting ties with their most strategic partner in the Middle East, or will they take the hit and hope Saudi Arabia never strike again?